I should have known something was wrong when Jessica started using trail maps like a drug dealer uses burner phones. My name is Mike Patterson, and I've been married to Jessica Walsh Patterson for 12 years. We met on a hiking expedition in the Smoky Mountains back when my knees still worked, and my faith in people hadn't been shattered like safety glass on asphalt. Jessica was the kind of woman who could identify bird calls at dawn and navigate by stars at midnight. She taught environmental science at Asheville High School, and her students worshipped her like she was some kind of nature goddess. I fixed broken bodies at the Regional Medical Center, torn rotator cuffs, shredded ACLs, the aftermath of people who thought they were younger than their joints remembered. We were perfect together, or so I thought. Trail partners in every sense of the word. Then I tore my knee to pieces on a black diamond, run at Sugar Mountain in January 2022. One moment I was carving through powder like butter. The next I was screaming into the snow while my patella decided to explore new anatomical territories. 3 surgeries, 8 months of physical therapy, and a permanent reminder that some things once broken never quite heal the same way. Jessica was supportive through it all. She drove me to appointments, helped with exercises, and never once complained when I couldn't keep up with her hiking schedule anymore. Instead, she started going solo. "I need the solitude to reconnect with nature," she'd say, shouldering her day pack with the kind of reverence other people reserved for church. Every third weekend, like clockwork. Saturday morning at 7 sharp, she'd kiss my forehead and disappear into the mountains until evening. I'd spend the day icing my knee and catching up on physical therapy journals, telling myself I was lucky to have a wife who didn't resent my limitations. The first red flag should have been the gear. Jessica's hiking equipment had always been practical. Functional boots, a well-worn backpack, the kind of gear that gets the job done without making a statement. But somewhere around the 6-month mark of her solo adventures, everything got an upgrade. The school's outdoor education program got a budget increase, she explained, modeling a sleek new backpack that probably cost more than my car payment. Professional development expenses. The boots came next. Then the GPS watch. Then the lightweight sleeping bag that she definitely didn't need for day hikes. "Planning some overnight trips?" I asked, watching her stuff the sleeping bag into her pack. "Maybe some weekend retreats, wilderness meditation workshops." Wilderness meditation. Right. I should have been suspicious, but I was dealing with my own problems. My knee was acting up again and the weather wasn't helping. Some days I could barely make it up the stairs to our bedroom, let alone question my wife's sudden interest in expensive outdoor gear. The second red flag was Tyler Barnes. Jessica mentioned him in passing one evening while we were eating dinner on the deck of our cabin. We lived about 20 minutes outside Asheville, nestled in the foothills where the air was clean and the nearest neighbor was far enough away that you couldn't hear their television. "New guy at school," she said, twirling spaghetti around her fork. "Outdoor education coordinator. We're collaborating on some curriculum projects." I grunted something non-committal. Jessica worked with a lot of people, and she'd always been passionate about integrating environmental education into the core curriculum. It was one of the things I loved about her, the way her eyes lit up when she talked about teaching kids to respect the wilderness. But over the following weeks, Tyler's name started popping up more frequently. Tyler had suggested a new trail for her solo hikes. Tyler had recommended a book about forest ecology. Tyler thought the students would benefit from more hands-on outdoor experiences. Tyler. "Sounds like a dedicated teacher," I said one night, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. He really is. He's helping me develop a whole new approach to environmental education. We're planning some incredible field trips for next semester. The way she said it, with that excited breathiness usually reserved for discovering a new waterfall or spotting a rare bird, made something cold settle in my stomach. But I pushed the feeling down. Jessica loved me. We'd been through hell together with my injury, and she'd never given me any reason to doubt her. If she was excited about work, that was a good thing. Right? The third red flag was the calendar. Jessica had always been organized, but her planning became militant. She bought one of those large wall calendars and marked her solo hiking weekends with little blue X's. Not just the current month, but 3 months in advance. I want to make sure I don't accidentally double book myself, she explained when I asked about it. Every third weekend. Blue X. Retreat time. I try to suggest adaptive hiking options that might work with my knee. There were easier trails, specialized equipment, even guided tours for people with mobility issues. Jessica shot down every suggestion with the efficiency of a surface-to-air missile. Those aren't real hikes, Mike. I need the challenge, the solitude. Always the solitude. By October, I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own marriage. Jessica would come back from her weekend retreats, glowing with an energy that had nothing to do with forest air and everything to do with something she wasn't telling me. She'd be extra affectionate for a few days, as if overcompensating for something, then gradually withdraw again as the next blue X approached. I told myself I was being paranoid. My injury had changed our dynamic, and maybe Jessica was processing that in her own way. Some people needed space to work through complicated emotions. I was a physical therapist. I understood that healing, whether emotional or physical, wasn't always linear. But understanding something intellectually and feeling it in your gut are two different things. The breaking point came on Saturday, November 15th. Jessica had marked her calendar the night before, another blue X, this one annotated with Grandfather Mountain Retreat. She was up before dawn, moving around the house with the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this routine dozens of times. "See you tonight," she whispered, kissing my forehead as I pretended to sleep. Around 5. I listened to her car pull out of the driveway, then lay in bed staring at the ceiling until the sun came up. Something felt different about this weekend. Maybe it was the way she'd avoided eye contact, or the fact that she'd packed her sleeping bag again for what was supposed to be a day hike. 5 o'clock came and went. No Jessica. I texted her at 5:30. "Running late?" No response. 6 p.m. "Getting worried. Let me know you're okay." Nothing. By 7 o'clock, I was pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. Jessica was never late. Never. She was the kind of person who arrived at appointments 10 minutes early and had contingency plans for her contingency plans. At 8, I called her phone. Straight to voicemail. By 10, I was grabbing my keys and a flashlight, loading up on ibuprofen for what was about to be a very bad idea. I drove to the Grandfather Mountain area, my knee already protesting as I pressed the gas pedal. Jessica's favorite trail was Rough Ridge, a moderately difficult hike that offered spectacular views of the Blue Ridge Mountains. If she was doing a solo retreat, that's where she'd be. The parking area was empty except for a single car I didn't recognize, a blue Subaru with North Carolina plates. Jessica's car was nowhere in sight. I started up the trail in the dark, using my phone's flashlight to navigate the rocky path. Every step sent a spike of pain through my knee, but adrenaline and growing panic kept me moving. I'd hiked this trail dozens of times with Jessica before my injury. I knew every turn, every steep section, every place where the path split off toward more remote areas. 2 miles in, I had to stop and pop another ibuprofen. My knee was swelling, and I could feel that familiar grinding sensation that meant I was pushing too hard. But Jessica was out there somewhere, possibly hurt, possibly lost. I kept going. The trail split at the 4-mile mark, one path continuing toward the main vista, the other winding off into backcountry that most day hikers avoided. I was about to take the main path when I saw something that made me stop dead. A light. Faint but steady, flickering through the trees about a quarter-mile off the main trail. Emergency shelter, I thought. Maybe Jessica had gotten hurt and someone had built a fire. Or maybe it was another lost hiker, someone who might have seen her. I followed the light through the trees, using my hiking poles for support as the terrain got rougher. My knee was screaming now, but the light was getting brighter. What I found wasn't an emergency shelter. It was a cabin. A nice one, with real windows and a stone chimney putting out actual smoke. Light spilled from the windows like something out of a Christmas card, warm and inviting in the middle of the wilderness. I approached cautiously, thinking I'd ask whoever was inside if they'd seen Jessica. Maybe they were local hikers who knew the area better than I did. I was about 10 feet from the main window when I saw them. Jessica was sitting at a rustic wooden table, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of tied back in the practical ponytail she wore for hiking. Across from her sat a tall man with a beard, someone I recognized but couldn't immediately place. They were having dinner. Candlelight flickered between them, casting shadows on their faces as they leaned toward each other with the intimate body language of people who'd done this before. Many times before. I was about to knock on the door when Jessica reached across the table and took the man's hand. He lifted it to his lips and kissed her palm, slow and deliberate. That's when I recognized him. Tyler Barnes, the outdoor education coordinator. Jessica's curriculum partner. My hands started shaking, but I had the presence of mind to pull out my phone and start recording. The camera caught everything. The intimate dinner, the hand-holding, the way Tyler stood up and walked around the table to where Jessica was sitting. She tilted her face up toward him, and he kissed her. Not a friendly peck, not a professional collision of lips. A real kiss, the kind that spoke of familiarity and practice and things I didn't want to think about. On the wall behind them, clearly visible in the frame of my phone's camera, was a calendar. It had blue X's marked on it, matching the pattern I'd seen on our kitchen calendar for months. Every third weekend. Their weekend. Their routine. While I'd been icing my knee and reading about rehabilitation techniques, my wife had been playing house with another man in a cabin I didn't even know existed. I don't know how long I stood there recording, watching 12 years of marriage crumble like leaves in winter. It might have been 30 seconds. It might have been 5 minutes. Time does funny things when your world implodes. They must have seen movement outside the window because suddenly Tyler was standing up, looking alert. Jessica followed his gaze toward the window, and her face went white when she saw me. I had two choices: slink away into the darkness and pretend this never happened, or kick in the door and demand an explanation. I chose option 3. The cabin door was unlocked, which somehow made everything worse. I burst through it like an avenging angel, my knee screaming in protest but my adrenaline overriding everything. "I've been worried sick," I shouted, waving my phone at them. 8 hours wondering if my wife was dead in a ditch somewhere, and here you are playing married couple in the middle of nowhere. Jessica jumped up so fast her chair fell over backward. Her face was the color of fresh snow, and for a second I thought she might faint. Tyler, to his credit, stood his ground. "You must be Mike," he said, extending his hand as if we were meeting at a church social. "I'm Tyler Barnes. I work with Jessica at the school." "I know exactly who you are," I said, ignoring his outstretched hand. "And I know what this is." I held up my phone, the video still playing on the screen. Their kiss replayed in an endless loop, along with the calendar on the wall that matched my wife's hiking schedule perfectly. "How long?" I asked. My voice was surprisingly calm, which scared me more than shouting would have. Jessica finally found her voice. "Mike, I can explain." "How long?" Tyler stepped forward, apparently thinking he could defuse the situation. "Look, this isn't how we wanted you to find out, but we—" I turned on him with a fury that surprised all of us. "We wanted? Since when do you get a vote in my marriage?" "Mike, please." Jessica was crying now, tears streaming down her face. "Your injury changed everything. You can't hike anymore. You can't do any of the things we used to love together." I felt so alone. "So you decided to find a replacement." I looked around the cabin, taking in the details I'd missed in my initial shock. 2 coffee mugs on the counter. Women's toiletries on the bathroom shelf. A second set of hiking boots by the door. "How long has this been going on?" Tyler crossed his arms, and I noticed he was wearing one of those expensive GPS watches that Jessica had supposedly gotten through the school budget. "Since March," Jessica whispered. "March. 8 months. 2/3 of a year of lies, deception, and playing the devoted wife while screwing another man every 3rd weekend." "The calendar on your wall," I said, pointing at the evidence hanging right there in plain sight. "It matches your retreat schedule perfectly. Every blue X, every weekend you told me you needed solitude to reconnect with nature." "I do reconnect with nature," Jessica said, as if that somehow justified anything. "We hike together, You were reconnecting with him," I interrupted. "All those new gear purchases, all those overnight meditation retreats. You were furnishing a love nest." Tyler finally spoke up again. Jessica needed someone who could share her passion for the outdoors. Someone who understood her connection to the wilderness. Someone who could share her bed, you mean? The silence that followed was so complete I could hear the fire crackling in the stone fireplace. Tyler's face flushed red, but he didn't deny it. I looked around the cabin one more time, memorizing details. The GPS coordinates on Tyler's hiking watch were visible from where I stood. The property looked like family land, the kind of place that had been in someone's family for generations. "Your family's place?" I asked Tyler. He nodded, apparently seeing no point in lying anymore. "Convenient. Private. 2 miles from any real trail access." I was thinking out loud now, cataloging everything for later. "Perfect place for a twice-monthly affair." "It's not just an affair," Jessica said, her voice gaining strength. "We love each other." "You love each other." I repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. "You love each other enough to destroy a 12-year marriage, but not enough to actually leave your husband." Neither of them had an answer for that. I limped over to where Jessica's hiking poles were leaning against the wall and picked them up. My knee was on fire, and I had a 2-mile hike back to my car through wilderness in the dark. "Enjoy your retreat weekend," I said, shouldering Jessica's poles. "Find your own way home, both of you." I left them standing in their cozy cabin, walking out into the cold mountain night with evidence that would change everything. My phone had GPS coordinates, video proof, and more than enough ammunition to end this marriage on my terms. The hike back to my car was brutal. Every step sent lightning through my knee, and by the time I reached the parking area, I was limping so badly I had to use Jessica's poles like crutches. I'd probably set my recovery back by months, but I didn't care. I had bigger problems to deal with. The drive home passed in a blur of rage and adrenaline. I kept expecting my phone to ring, expecting Jessica to call with some explanation or apology or attempt at damage control. But my phone stayed silent all the way back to our cabin in the foothills. I sat in my truck in our driveway for a long time, staring at the house we'd shared for 8 years. Jessica's car wasn't there, obviously. She was probably spending the night in Tyler's family cabin, maybe having the conversation they should have had before deciding to blow up my life. Inside, the house felt different. The silence wasn't peaceful anymore. It was accusatory. Every family photo on the walls looked like evidence of a lie I'd been too trusting to see. I went straight to Jessica's desk and started looking through her paperwork. If she'd been having an affair for 8 months, there had to be other evidence. Credit card statements, receipts, something that would help me understand exactly how deep this betrayal went. I found the cabin rental receipts buried in a folder marked Professional Development. 3 different remote cabins, all booked for weekend getaways over the past 6 months. All paid for with our joint credit card, money I'd assumed was going toward Jessica's solo meditation retreats. The amounts were staggering. We weren't poor, but we weren't rich either. And Jessica had been spending hundreds of dollars every month on romantic weekends with her boyfriend, while I sat at home nursing my knee and missing our shared adventures. My phone buzzed. A text from Jessica. "Mike, please come back. We need to talk." I deleted it without responding. The next text came an hour later. "I know you're angry, but we can work through this." Work through this. Like her 8-month affair was a communication problem we could solve with couples therapy. I turned my phone off and spent the rest of the night going through Jessica's things with the methodical precision of a crime scene investigator. By dawn, I had a clear picture of just how elaborate her deception had been. She'd created an entire parallel life. Hidden social media accounts where she posted photos from hiking trips with Tyler. Email threads discussing their relationship and their plans for the future. Hotel receipts from weekends when she'd supposedly been on school field trips. And buried in her browser history, searches for divorce lawyers in North Carolina. That last discovery hit me like a physical blow. Jessica hadn't just been having an affair, she'd been planning to leave me. All those months of playing the supportive wife while I recovered from surgery, she'd been researching how to end our marriage while protecting her own interests. But she'd made one crucial mistake. North Carolina was a fault-based divorce state, and adultery changed everything. If I could prove Jessica's affair, which I could, thanks to my midnight mountain hike, she wouldn't be entitled to spousal support. Our property division would favor the innocent spouse, and any claims she might make on my retirement benefits would be significantly reduced. Jessica thought she was being smart, planning her exit strategy in secret. But she'd handed me every weapon I needed to destroy her in court. The sun was coming up when I finally allowed myself to feel the full weight of what had happened. 12 years of marriage, gone. The woman I'd trusted with my recovery, my vulnerability, my future, had been living a double life that made everything we'd shared feel like performance art. I'd loved Jessica with the kind of devotion that people write songs about. I'd been faithful through boring stretches, supportive through her career struggles, and grateful for her patience during my darkest moments after the injury. She'd repaid that devotion by playing house with another man while I sat home alone, believing in a marriage that had ended 8 months ago without anyone bothering to tell me. My phone rang. Jessica again. This time I answered. "Where are you?" she asked. Her voice was small, uncertain. "Home," I said. "Where my wife is supposed to be." "Mike, I'm sorry. I know this looks terrible, but if you'll just let me explain." "Explain what?" "That you've been screwing your coworker for 8 months. That you've been using our money to fund romantic getaways while lying to my face about meditation retreats. That you were planning to divorce me anyway, based on the browser history I found on your laptop." Silence. "When were you going to tell me, Jessica? Or were you planning to just disappear one day and let me figure it out myself?" "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she whispered. "How was it supposed to happen? What was the plan? String me along until you had your exit strategy completely figured out, then announce you were leaving me for someone who could still hike? You don't understand. After your injury, everything changed between us. You were depressed, angry, unable to do any of the things we used to love together. I felt like I was mourning the man I married. So you decided to find a replacement instead of working through it together, like we promised when we got married. Tyler understands me in ways you can't anymore. He shares my passion for the outdoors. He can keep up with me on trails. He can get it up without knee pain interfering. I get it." Another silence. "When are you coming home?" I asked. "I need some time to think." "Take all the time you need. I'll be consulting with a divorce attorney first thing Monday morning." I hung up before she could respond. The weekend passed in a haze of research and planning. I downloaded every photo, saved every email, and compiled a comprehensive record of Jessica's affair. I researched North Carolina divorce law until I could have taught a course on it. I documented my injuries from the night hike that had led to my discovery. Photos of my swollen knee, medical records showing the damage I'd done to my recovery timeline. Jessica came home Sunday evening, looking like she'd aged 10 years in 2 days. She found me in the kitchen, surrounded by printed emails and credit card statements. "You went through my private things," she said. "Your private things were purchased with our joint credit card and conducted in our joint home. There's no privacy in an 8-month affair funded with marital assets." She sat down across from me, and for a moment I remembered what it used to feel like when we talked through problems together, before she decided to solve our problems by sleeping with someone else. "I never meant for it to go this far," she said. "How far was it supposed to go? What was the acceptable level of betrayal you had in mind?" "It started as friendship. Tyler was new at school and we were working together on curriculum development. He understood my frustration about your limitations, about how your injury had changed our relationship. So you confided in him about our private marriage problems. He was sympathetic. He knew what it was like to love outdoor activities and feel trapped by circumstances." Trapped. I set down the email I'd been reading and looked at her directly. "You felt trapped by my injury. Not by your injury, by what it meant for us, for our future. You used to be adventurous, spontaneous. After the surgery, you became cautious, careful. You turned down every suggestion I made for adaptive hiking, like you'd given up on the idea of us having outdoor adventures together. Because I was trying to protect my recovery, because I was following doctor's orders and being responsible about a major surgical repair. I know that intellectually, but emotionally, it felt like you were giving up on the part of our relationship that meant the most to me." I wanted to throw something at her. The part of our relationship that meant the most to her was hiking? Not our communication, our shared values, our commitment to each other through difficult times. Hiking was the make or break element of our marriage. So you decided to find someone who could keep up with you on trails. Tyler didn't just keep up with me, he challenged me. He introduced me to new trails, new experiences. He made me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. In bed or on the trail? Her face flushed. Both. At least she was being honest now. When did it become physical? April. We were on a weekend field trip with students to Mount Mitchell. We ended up talking late into the night about everything. My marriage, his recent divorce, our shared love of wilderness education. One thing led to another. His recent divorce? I leaned forward. Tyler's divorced? His divorce was finalized last year. His ex-wife didn't share his outdoor interests either. Convenient. So you bonded over being misunderstood by spouses who couldn't appreciate your magnificent connection to nature. Don't mock it, Mike. You used to understand what the wilderness meant to me. I still understand it. What I don't understand is how that justifies an 8-month affair. Jessica stood up and walked to the window overlooking our deck. In the failing light, she looked like the woman I'd fallen in love with 14 years ago on a hiking trail in the Smokies. Before injuries and betrayals and the slow erosion of trust that I was only now beginning to understand. I tried to end it several times, she said, without turning around. But every time I came home to you sitting in that chair with ice on your knee, complaining about pain levels and physical therapy appointments, I felt like I was suffocating. So you went back to Tyler for air. He represented the life I thought I was losing forever. And I represented what exactly? The life you were stuck with? She turned around then, tears streaming down her face. You represented compromise, limitation, a future where I'd have to give up the things I loved most because my husband couldn't participate anymore. Couldn't or wouldn't. What's the difference? The difference is that couldn't implies a medical limitation that we work around together, while wouldn't implies a choice that threatens your personal happiness. Guess which one you decided was true? We stared at each other across 8 years of shared history and 8 months of lies. I could see the exact moment when Jessica realized that this conversation wasn't going to end with forgiveness and reconciliation. What do you want from me? She asked. I want you to pack a bag and stay somewhere else while I figure out how to untangle 12 years of marriage from someone who checked out 8 months ago without bothering to file the paperwork. Mike, I want you to understand that adultery in North Carolina means you don't get spousal support. It means our property division won't be the 50-50 split you were probably counting on. It means you gave up the right to half of everything when you decided to have half of someone else. Her face went pale. You're going to use this against me legally? You used my trust against me romantically. Fair's fair. I made a mistake. People recover from infidelity all the time. We could try counseling. We could try a lot of things. But we won't. Because you didn't make a mistake, Jessica. You made a series of deliberate choices over 8 months while lying to my face and using our money to fund your alternative relationship. That's not a mistake. That's a lifestyle. She was sobbing now, but I felt nothing. Whatever capacity I'd had for sympathizing with Jessica's emotional needs had died in a cabin 2 nights ago. I'll pack some things, she said finally. Take whatever you need. I'll be changing the locks tomorrow. The locks? This is my house too. Was. It was your house too when you were actually living in this marriage instead of just using it as a base camp between affairs. She went upstairs to pack, and I heard her moving around in our bedroom, opening drawers and closets with the mechanical efficiency of someone who'd been planning this moment longer than she was willing to admit. When she came back downstairs with a suitcase and a duffel bag, she paused in the doorway. "For what it's worth, I never stopped loving you," she said. "You just loved Tyler more." I loved what Tyler represented, the possibility of a life where I wouldn't have to choose between my marriage and my passions. You wouldn't have had to choose if you'd been willing to work with my limitations instead of around them. But that would have required effort and compromise, and Tyler was easier. That's not fair. Fair died when you started kissing another man while I was home alone wondering why my wife didn't want to spend time with me anymore. She left without another word, and I watched her taillights disappear down our driveway toward whatever new life she thought she was building with Tyler Barnes. Then I started making phone calls. The first call was to a locksmith who promised to be there first thing Monday morning. The second call was to my lawyer, a sharp woman named Patricia Chen, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for being particularly effective in adultery cases. The third call was to the Asheville County School Board. "I'd like to report a potential conflict of interest between two employees," I told the administrative assistant who answered. "Jessica Walsh Patterson and Tyler Barnes appear to be involved in a personal relationship that may be affecting their professional judgment regarding curriculum development and resource allocation." It was Sunday night, so I left a detailed message with my contact information. Monday morning, I'd follow up with documentation. The fourth call was to the county zoning office. Tyler's family cabin was probably supposed to be used for hunting and seasonal recreation, not as a full-time love nest. If Jessica and Tyler had been using it as a primary residence every third weekend, there might be occupancy violations worth investigating. By midnight Sunday, I had a comprehensive plan for dismantling Jessica's new life with the same methodical precision she'd used to build it behind my back. Monday morning brought the locksmith, the lawyer, and the beginning of what Patricia Chen cheerfully called the documentation phase. "This is excellent evidence," she said, reviewing the photos, videos, and financial records I'd compiled over the weekend. "Your wife made this very easy for us." I'd specifically asked Patricia not to use phrases like "the best documentation I've ever seen," or anything that sounded like a legal drama script. She was refreshingly direct. "What's our strategy?" I asked. "Straightforward. We file for divorce citing adultery, which bars her from spousal support and influences property division in your favor. We document the financial impact of her affair. Money spent on cabin rentals, hotels, equipment purchases that were effectively gifts to her boyfriend. We calculate the cost of your medical setback from that night hike, since you wouldn't have been out in the mountains in the dark if she'd been where she was supposed to be." "How long will this take?" "North Carolina requires a 1-year separation period before absolute divorce. But we can file for legal separation immediately, which will protect your assets and establish the legal framework for everything that follows." "And the school board complaint?" "Not my area, but it sounds like you've got solid grounds for a professional ethics investigation. Teachers aren't supposed to play favorites with colleagues they're sleeping with." Tuesday morning, the Asheville County School Board called me back. "Mr. Patterson, this is Dr. Williams from the administrative office. We received your message about a potential conflict of interest. Could you come in to discuss this matter?" I met with Dr. Williams and 2 other administrators Wednesday afternoon. They listened with increasingly serious expressions as I laid out the timeline of Jessica and Tyler's relationship, the correlation with curriculum projects and field trip assignments, and the financial irregularities in the outdoor education program budget. You're alleging that Ms. Walsh-Patterson and Mr. Barnes use school resources to facilitate their personal relationship? Dr. Williams asked. I'm suggesting that you audit their professional collaboration over the past 8 months and determine whether their personal relationship affected their judgment regarding resource allocation, student supervision, and program development. I showed them the receipts for Jessica's gear purchases, all claimed as professional development expenses. I provided the timeline of Tyler's arrival at the school and the beginning of Jessica's weekend retreat schedule. I documented the field trips they'd supervised together and the curriculum projects they'd jointly developed. We take allegations of professional misconduct very seriously, Dr. Williams assured me. We'll be conducting a thorough investigation. By Thursday, both Jessica and Tyler had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. Friday afternoon, my phone rang. Jessica. You got us suspended, she said without preamble. You got yourselves suspended. I just provided information about the timeline of your relationship and its potential impact on your professional judgment. We never did anything inappropriate with students. Our personal relationship didn't affect our work. Your personal relationship affected your budget decisions, your project partnerships, and your field trip assignments. That's the definition of professional misconduct. You're destroying our careers out of spite. I'm holding you accountable for the choices you made. If your careers can't survive accountability, maybe you should have thought about that before mixing business with adultery. Tyler could lose his teaching license. Tyler should have considered that possibility before sleeping with a married colleague. I can't believe you're being this vindictive. Vindictive would be posting your affair on social media for all your students and colleagues to see. Vindictive would be sending copies of your cabin videos to Tyler's ex-wife. I'm being strategic. Silence. Tyler's ex-wife, Jessica said slowly. The one he supposedly divorced because she didn't appreciate his outdoor lifestyle? Yeah, her. I found her contact information through public records. Interesting woman. Very interested in Tyler's recent activities. Mike, what did you do? Nothing yet. But North Carolina allows alienation of affection lawsuits, and Tyler's ex-wife is very motivated to explore her legal options. You can't seriously be threatening to involve his ex-wife in this. I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining consequences. Tyler chose to have an affair with a married woman. His ex-wife has the right to know that her divorce settlement might have been negotiated under false pretenses if Tyler was already involved with you during their separation. Jessica hung up without saying goodbye. Saturday morning brought a visit from Tyler himself. I was on the deck, icing my knee and reading, when he pulled into my driveway like he owned the place. We need to talk, he said, climbing the steps to my deck without invitation. No, we don't. You're destroying innocent people out of revenge. Jessica and I love each other. We're planning to build a life together. Congratulations. Build it somewhere else with someone else's wife. Tyler was a big guy, the kind of outdoorsy male who probably intimidated most people through sheer physical presence. But I'd spent 2 years rehabbing my knee, which meant 2 years of learning that sometimes you have to push through pain to achieve your goals. You need to call off this campaign, he said, settling into the chair across from me without being asked. The school board investigation, the threats against my ex-wife, whatever other schemes you're cooking up. This has gone far enough. Has it? Because from where I sit, it hasn't gone nearly far enough. I set down my book and gave Tyler my full attention for the first time. Up close, he was younger than I'd expected, maybe 35, with the kind of artificially rugged appearance that came from expensive outdoor gear and carefully curated social media posts. "Jessica told me about your injury," he said, apparently thinking this was some kind of peace offering. "I understand why you're angry. You lost something important, and Jessica represented the last connection to your outdoor lifestyle. Jessica represented my wife, the woman I'd been married to for 12 years. The woman who promised to stick with me through sickness and health, but apparently meant it with an asterisk. People grow apart. Marriages end. It doesn't have to be this ugly." "You're right. It didn't have to be this ugly. It could have been a clean divorce if Jessica had been honest about wanting to leave instead of conducting an 8-month affair while using our money to fund your romantic getaways." Tyler shifted in his chair. "The cabin belongs to my family. We weren't using your money for anything inappropriate. Except for Jessica's gear upgrades, the hotel receipts I found, the restaurant charges on weekends when she was supposedly doing solo meditation retreats. Want me to calculate the total? I've got spreadsheets. Look, maybe we handled this wrong. Maybe we should have been more upfront about our feelings. But you can't destroy our professional lives because your marriage didn't work out. Watch me." Tyler leaned forward, and for a moment I thought he might try to physically intimidate me. But I'd been doing physical therapy for 2 years, which meant I was probably in better shape than I looked. Plus, I was sitting on my own deck with legal evidence of his affair stored in multiple locations. He was the one with something to lose. "I'm trying to be reasonable here," he said. "Reasonable would have been divorcing your wife before starting a relationship with mine. Reasonable would have been Jessica filing for separation before playing house with you every third weekend. You both forfeited reasonable when you decided to lie to everyone for 8 months. What do you want? Money? We could work out some kind of financial arrangement. I want you to understand that actions have consequences. You wanted to sleep with my wife? Fine. But you don't get to do it without the professional, personal, and legal ramifications that come with adultery in North Carolina." Tyler stood up, apparently realizing that intimidation wasn't going to work. "This isn't over." "Yes, it is. Your relationship with Jessica will end when the financial and professional pressure becomes too much to handle. She'll blame you for the complications, you'll blame her for not being worth the trouble, and you'll both move on to ruin someone else's life. You don't know anything about our relationship. I know it was built on lies and betrayal, which means it's got about as much structural integrity as a house built on quicksand. Give it 6 months." He left without another word, but I could see the doubt in his eyes. He was starting to understand that Jessica came with more baggage than he'd bargained for. Monday brought news from Patricia Chen. The school board investigation had uncovered enough irregularities to recommend disciplinary action against both Jessica and Tyler. They wouldn't lose their teaching licenses, but their careers in Asheville were effectively over. "Jessica's looking for work in Charlotte," Patricia told me. "Tyler's considering moving back to wherever his family is from. Sounds like the pressure is working." Tuesday brought a call from Tyler's ex-wife, a woman named Sandra, who'd been very interested in my information about her ex-husband's activities. "I wanted to thank you for reaching out," she said. "Tyler told me during our divorce that he needed space to focus on his career and wasn't interested in a serious relationship. Knowing that he was actually planning to move in with your wife changes a lot of things legally. Are you planning to take action? My lawyer is reviewing our settlement agreement. If Tyler misrepresented his intentions during our divorce proceedings, I may have grounds to reopen some financial issues." "And the alienation of affection lawsuit?" "Still considering it. But honestly, the threat alone seems to be accomplishing what I need. Tyler's been calling me every day trying to explain himself. Wednesday brought the phone call I'd been expecting. "I can't take this anymore," Jessica said. She sounded exhausted, defeated. The school board, Tyler's ex-wife, the legal separation paperwork, the financial pressure. This isn't what I wanted. What did you want? I wanted to be happy. I wanted to be with someone who could share the outdoor lifestyle I loved. I didn't want to destroy our marriage or hurt you or ruin Tyler's career. But you were willing to accept all of that as collateral damage. I thought we could figure it out quietly. I thought maybe you'd eventually understand and we could divorce amicably. While you continued sleeping with Tyler and using our money to fund your new relationship. I made mistakes. I know that now. But this campaign you're running is destroying innocent people. Innocent people don't have 8-month affairs with married colleagues while lying to their spouses and professional supervisors. Tyler's gonna lose his job. His ex-wife is threatening to sue me. I can't find work in Asheville because everyone knows what happened. We can't even go hiking in our own area because the outdoor community has turned against us. Actions meet consequences. Consequences meet actions. I want to work this out, Mike. I want to try to save our marriage. The words hung in the air like smoke from a dying fire. 8 months ago, I would have done anything to hear Jessica say she wanted to work on our marriage. Now, it felt like a manipulation tactic from someone who'd finally realized the true cost of her choices. "It's too late for that," I said. "It doesn't have to be. We could go to counseling, we could—" "Jessica, you spent 8 months building a life with another man while lying to my face every single day. You used our money to fund romantic getaways while I sat home alone wondering why my wife was pulling away from me. You were researching divorce lawyers while playing the supportive wife during my recovery. I know I hurt you, but people survive infidelity. We could find a way to rebuild trust. Trust isn't something you rebuild after this level of betrayal. Trust is something you protect, and you destroyed it completely. So that's it? 12 years of marriage, gone? 12 years of marriage ended 8 months ago when you decided Tyler was a better option. I'm just filing the paperwork." She was crying now, but I felt nothing. The woman I'd loved was gone, replaced by someone who thought love was something you could turn on and off depending on your current recreational preferences. What about everything we shared? All those hiking trips, all those plans we made, all those promises we gave each other? Those promises included forsaking all others, which you apparently interpreted as forsaking all others unless they could keep up with you on mountain trails. That's not fair. Fair would have been honoring your marriage vows. Fair would have been working with me through the challenges of my injury instead of finding someone who didn't have challenges. Fair would have been being honest about your feelings instead of conducting a secret affair for 8 months. I'm ending it with Tyler. The words came out in a rush, like she'd been holding them back and finally decided they were her last shot at salvaging something from the wreckage. Too little, too late. I mean it. I'll call him right now. I'll tell him it's over, that I want to work on my marriage. And then what? We pretend the last 8 months never happened. We pretend you didn't choose him over me dozens of times. We pretend I can trust you not to find another Tyler when the next challenge comes along. I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back. There's nothing you can do, Jessica. Trust isn't earned back from this level of betrayal. Trust is built over time through consistent actions, and you spent 8 months proving that your actions don't match your words. So you're going to throw away 12 years over one mistake? One mistake is forgetting our anniversary. 8 months of adultery while lying to my face is a lifestyle choice. The conversation ended like all our recent conversations, with Jessica crying and me feeling nothing where love used to live. Thursday brought news that Tyler had resigned from his position and was moving back to Western North Carolina to live with his family. Jessica had found a teaching position in Charlotte, 3 hours away from Asheville and far from the hiking community that had turned against her. Friday brought the final pieces of legal paperwork. Our year of separation would begin the following week, with absolute divorce available after the mandatory waiting period. Jessica would get her personal belongings, her car, and about 30% of our joint assets. I would keep the house, my retirement benefits, and the satisfaction of knowing that adultery in North Carolina still carried real consequences. Patricia Chen walked me through the final documents with the efficiency of someone who'd handled hundreds of similar cases. "Clean resolution," she said. "Your documentation made this straightforward. What happens now? Now you rebuild. Jessica and Tyler will do the same, probably separately once the pressure and reality of their choices sets in completely." You think they'll break up? Relationships built on betrayal usually don't survive the transition to legitimacy. They fell in love with the excitement of secrecy and the thrill of forbidden romance. Take away the drama, add financial pressure and professional consequences, and most people discover they don't actually like each other that much. She was right. 2 months later, I heard through mutual friends that Jessica and Tyler had ended their relationship. Apparently, the stress of job hunting, legal pressure, and social isolation had taken its toll on their great outdoor romance. Jessica was teaching high school biology in Charlotte and living alone. Tyler was working for a recreational outfitter near Boone and, according to social media, dating someone new. The great love affair that had destroyed my marriage lasted exactly 10 months from start to finish. I wish I could say I felt vindicated, but mostly I felt empty. Winning a war against people who'd betrayed me didn't restore what they'd taken away. It just proved that their betrayal had been as shallow and temporary as I'd suspected. 6 months after Jessica moved out, I started dating again. Not seriously at first, just coffee meetings with friends of friends, people who understood that I was still rebuilding both my physical capabilities and my faith in other people. I met Sarah Kim at an adaptive sports clinic where I was volunteering with injured veterans who were learning to ski and hike with prosthetics and mobility aids. She was an orthopedic surgeon who'd torn her ACL in a mountaineering accident and was dealing with her own adjustment to physical limitations. "The hardest part isn't the physical recovery," she told me over coffee after our first day volunteering together. "It's accepting that some things have to be done differently now, not given up entirely." Sarah understood adaptation in ways Jessica never had. She'd found ways to continue mountaineering with a knee brace and modified techniques. She'd learned to see physical limitations as challenges to work around, not barriers that ended activities completely. We started hiking together, taking trails that accommodated both of our physical restrictions without compromising the experience. Sarah introduced me to adaptive equipment and modified techniques that allowed me to return to wilderness activities I'd thought were lost forever. "Your ex-wife was wrong about one thing," Sarah said one evening, as we watched sunset from a mountain overlook I'd thought I'd never see again. "Physical limitations don't end outdoor adventures. They just change the route you take to get there." We got engaged 1 year after Jessica moved out, at the same overlook where Sarah had taught me that adaptation was possible. The wedding was planned for the following spring at Grandfather Mountain, about 5 miles from the cabin where I'd discovered Jessica's betrayal. Don't you think that's a bit macabre? Sarah asked when I suggested the location. Having our wedding so close to where your marriage ended? That's where my marriage ended, I said. But it's also where I learned to fight for what mattered to me. Seems like appropriate place to start something new. Jessica sent a card when she heard about our engagement through mutual friends. Inside, she'd written, "I hope you find the happiness you deserve." I threw the card away without responding. Jessica's opinions about my happiness were no longer relevant to my life. The wedding was small, attended by hiking friends, medical colleagues, and the adaptive sports community where Sarah and I had built our relationship. No one from Jessica's family attended, which wasn't surprising since they'd never forgiven her for the way she'd handled our divorce. During the ceremony, I looked out over the Blue Ridge Mountains and thought about the night I'd climbed through darkness to discover the truth about my marriage. That hike had been the most physically damaging thing I'd done to my knee since the original injury, but it had also been the most important walk I'd ever taken. Sometimes you have to walk through pain to reach solid ground. Sarah and I honeymooned in Colorado, where we hiked modified trails through Rocky Mountain National Park with the adaptive equipment and techniques she'd taught me. Every step reminded me that physical limitations didn't have to mean giving up the activities you loved. They just meant finding new ways to pursue them. On our last day in Colorado, we reached a summit that required technical climbing skills I'd developed specifically to work around my knee limitations. The view from the top was spectacular, but what struck me most was the realization that this was a peak I never would have attempted before my injury. My limitations had forced me to develop new skills that opened up adventures I'd never considered. "No regrets?" Sarah asked as we sat on the summit, sharing water and trail mix. "About what?" "About everything that led to this moment. Your injury, Jessica's affair, the divorce, the pain of rebuilding." I thought about it carefully. The injury had been devastating. Jessica's betrayal had been heartbreaking. The divorce had been expensive and emotionally draining. The recovery had been slow and sometimes discouraging. But all of those experiences had led me to this moment, sitting on a mountain peak with a woman who understood that love meant adapting to challenges together instead of abandoning ship when things got difficult. "No regrets," I said. 3 months later, I heard that Jessica had gotten engaged to a man she'd met in Charlotte. According to mutual friends, he was a computer programmer who had no interest in outdoor activities. Apparently, Jessica had decided that sharing recreational interests wasn't as important as financial stability and emotional reliability. I wondered if she thought about Tyler Barnes when she was planning her second wedding. I wondered if she remembered the 8 months of weekend retreats that had cost her a 12-year marriage, a career she'd loved, and a place in the community where she'd built her adult life. But I didn't wonder very long. Jessica's new life was no longer my concern, just as my happiness was no longer hers to influence. Sarah and I were building something different than what I'd had with Jessica. Our relationship was founded on honest communication about limitations and realistic planning for the future. We'd both learned that physical challenges could either strengthen a partnership or destroy it, depending on how the partners chose to respond. "The difference," Sarah explained to a friend who'd asked about our relationship, "is that we see challenges as problems to solve together, not obstacles that end the conversation. Sometimes the hardest trails lead to the most beautiful views." Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. So subscribe to my channel and watch the next video.